Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone. Hey Jose, I know it's late, but I just got a call from corporate. An older woman, probably in her 70s, called in. She said she saw your van in her neighborhood and wants you to come by to inspect the products. Sounds like a decent commission, though I know it's your day off, but figured you should handle this one. It might be better than having someone else go. Anyway, I put the address in the system, so you'll be able to see it in the morning. Thanks, man. I sat there, the weight of the message sinking in. I really was hoping for some rest. Who needs a day off, though? Not me, apparently. I can't afford one. I sighed, dropping my keys on the counter, the silence of the house suffocating. No late-night gaming tonight. Guess I had to cook something, but what was there to eat? I wandered to the fridge, pulled open the door. Nothing. Empty, like my life. Guess I needed to go grocery shopping. If the commission was good, maybe I could buy something more than bills this time. I had too many of those. Bills before food, that's how it goes. I grimaced at the barren kitchen. There was a box of knockoff cinnamon toast, crunch cheap, quick, no effort. I needed a new job badly. My eyelids felt heavy as I scrubbed at my eyes, fighting the exhaustion clawing at me. A yawn escaped. It was 4:45 a.m., 2 hours of sleep maybe. I couldn't even think straight. If I ate now, there'd be nothing left for dinner. But I needed that sale. I rushed through a quick shower, dressed hastily, trying to look like I had my life together. Old ladies didn't care what you looked like, as long as they saw value in whatever you were selling. I grabbed my keys, forced myself out the door, and climbed into the van. The company's supply van. I punched in the address 49 to 31 Willow Street. A little over an hour away. I'd never been out that way before. I closed my eyes for a second, desperate for just a minute more of sleep. Just a minute, but no, I had to suck it up. The old woman was probably senile anyway, but a sale was a sale. I opened my eyes and started the van, hoping it would be quick, hopefully easy. Normally, we didn't get requests like this. Maybe it would be an easy win. The farther I drove, the more isolated it became. Soon, I was surrounded by nothing but trees and silence. No other cars, no signs of life, just me and the road and the creeping quiet. It was strange how it felt peaceful, the kind of silence you couldn't get used to unless you'd been in the middle of nowhere. I don't think most people know what real silence is. It made my skin crawl, but I didn't want to think about it too hard. I ran through my sales pitch in my head, trying to figure out how to make her bite, how to convince her to buy something bigger, even if she didn't need it. The thought made me feel like a sleazy used car salesman. But I needed the commission. I needed food. The G-piece beeped, pulling me out of my thoughts. 1 mile. The road was nothing but trees, swamp, and a bug buffet on my windshield. I pulled into the driveway, if you could call it that. It was overgrown with grass, weeds, and gravel scattered in clumps. She didn't get out much. Probably had someone come by to handle her errands, bring her food. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Dark circles under my eyes. I could feel the exhaustion pulling me down. What I wouldn't give for 10 more minutes of sleep. But no, there was no time for sleep now. Only the strange, quiet house ahead of me. The old lady was waiting. I could be heading to the grocery store after this. What a thrill. I stepped forward, swatting at mosquitoes that buzzed aggressively around me. The swamp nearby was practically breeding them, but there seemed to be more than usual this time of day. Shouldn't they all be asleep? Perhaps not. Who was I to question mosquito habits? I wasn't a mosquito expert. The house loomed in front of me, old, decaying. The siding was peeling, and the shingles on the roof were in tatters, barely clinging to the structure. The garden, if you could even call it that, was a mess of withered plants and dead growth. Maintenance? An afterthought, clearly. I knocked loud enough to announce my presence, and then I heard it, breathing. Behind me, I spun around, heart leaping in my chest. There, just a few feet away, stood the old woman. I flinched, almost leaping out of my skin, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. My hands were shaking. I probably looked ridiculous, but I couldn't help it. "Oh, sorry, ma'am. I didn't expect someone to be behind me." "You're the one who called about the vacuums?" She didn't speak, just stared at me. Her eyes were hollow, a dull, lifeless blue that seemed to peer right through me. Her skin was like old parchment, pulled tight over her bones, so thin I could almost see through it. Her hair was almost gone, just wisps left hanging on her head. She was bent over, her body like a twisted, gnarled tree. The worst part? Mosquitoes. Crawling all over her face, weaving through the crevices of her wrinkled skin. She didn't seem to care. Didn't even flinch as one landed on her eyelid. I didn't know what to say. Excuse me while I bring in the vacuums," I muttered, stepping back as she slowly shuffled past me, holding the door open. I stood frozen, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. I needed to get this over with, get out of here as fast as possible. This place, this woman, something about it was wrong. I walked to the van and grabbed the vacuums, trying to ignore the oppressive heat and constant buzzing around me. As I walked back toward the house, I glanced up at the foggy window. She was there, staring out at me, her eyes locked onto mine, unmoving. I forced a smile, unsure if she had even seen me glance over. My pulse was still racing, and I had no idea why. Inside, I slipped off my shoes, following company protocol, trying to steady myself. The living room was unsettlingly empty. No furniture. Not even a chair or table. Had she moved everything out? Perhaps a family member came by to clear it out. Or maybe she knew I'd be demoing the vacuums and made sure there was nothing in the way. I looked toward the window again. She was still there, just standing, staring at me through the glass, her face covered in mosquitoes. Yet she didn't swat them away. She didn't react at all. The silence hung thick in the air, more suffocating than the buzzing of the insects. I swatted a mosquito from my arm and tried to push the discomfort down. "Do you mind if I close the door?" I asked, my voice faltering. She didn't answer. She didn't move. I slowly pulled the door shut, my eyes watching her, half expecting some sudden movement, some reaction. But no, she just kept standing there, eyes locked onto me. Her face, still covered in mosquitoes, was the most lifeless thing I'd ever seen. I couldn't take it anymore. "Do you have any animals?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Maybe a pet would explain some of this, but she didn't answer. I shrugged, and feeling the sweat on the back of my neck, I plugged in the first vacuum. I began vacuuming a small patch of carpet, trying to focus on the task. The vacuum roared to life, the noise filling the silence. I turned it off and looked up, waiting for some sign of a response, but she wasn't by the window anymore. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Where had she gone? I quickly scanned the room, my eyes darting over the empty space, confusion setting in. The vacuum was loud, too loud. I couldn't have heard her move. I swallowed hard, the pit in my stomach growing deeper. Something was terribly wrong. I turned my head to the right corner of the room and froze. She was there, on all fours like an animal, her body bent in unnatural ways, sniffing at the carpet, completely naked. Her skeletal frame barely held her up, with bony legs propping her back, while her hands dragged her frail body forward. Her back was covered in swollen lumps large, pulsating mosquito eggs. They looked like beehives, thrumming with life. Her cloudy blue eyes never left mine as she sniffed the carpet, moving closer and closer. The air felt suffocating, thick with dread. I wanted to get the hell out of there, but I couldn't move. The commission was no longer worth it. I had made a terrible mistake. My back slammed into the door. I reached for the handle, but it wouldn't budge. I pulled harder, panic setting in. I yanked at the door, screaming, desperate for it to open, but it was locked. No key, no handle, no way out. I was trapped. The woman, if she was even human anymore, kept crawling toward me, her movements impossibly fast, her eyes fixed on mine. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My legs felt like they were made of lead. I bolted to the other side of the room, my heart pounding, my skin prickling with fear. But she was faster, so much faster than I could have imagined. Before I could react, she was on me. Her mouth opened wide, lips pulled back into a grotesque smile, and she sank her gums into my leg. She had no teeth, just a slick sucking hole where her mouth should have been. The suction was unbearable, like she was trying to drink me dry. I kicked her in the face, my foot slamming into her, and she finally let go, her slimy grip releasing. She fell to the floor, her eyes fluttering closed. For a moment, I thought I was safe. But I was wrong. I bolted for the door again, clawing at it, pulling and twisting. But it was no use. The lock wouldn't give. Then, I heard it a sickening, wet pop. Like the sound of water being sloshed around in someone's mouth. I turned slowly, dread clawing at my insides, and looked back at the woman. She was lying there on the floor, her skin rippling. Green, oozy substance began to spill from her sides, dripping like syrup. Tiny mosquitoes began to crawl out of the goo, thousands of them. They covered her back, swarming her, as if her body had become an incubator. The buzzing. It was deafening, everywhere, the air thick with it. My skin crawled with the feeling of them, and I knew if I didn't get out, I'd be next. I grabbed the smallest vacuum and threw it through the foggy, cracked window where she had stood just moments before. The glass shattered with a sharp crack. Without thinking, I climbed out, crawling through the broken window. I ran to the van, but when I got close, my stomach dropped. The inside was swarming with mosquitoes, thousands of them, like a living, writhing mass. The doors were wide open, but there was no way in. I wasn't getting anywhere near that thing. I glanced back at the house. She was there, standing by the broken window, watching me. Her mouth opened slowly, impossibly wide, and a flood of mosquitoes began to crawl out of her throat, wriggling in and out of her like they were part of her. Her eyes were wide open, locked onto mine, and her mouth gaped open, letting the swarms spill out. I didn't wait. I ran. As fast as I could, away from that place, away from her. Now I'm sitting in my apartment. My skin is covered in mosquito bites. The itching is unbearable. I can't sleep. I can't think. 4 days have passed, and nothing has changed. I went to see my boss today. I told him the story, but he just stared at me as if I were crazy. He told me to take a week off to recover. But something's wrong with me. The skin on my body is peeling, flaking off in patches like old paper. My arms are covered in red raw patches, and I've been trying to stop the itching by taping up my wounds, but it doesn't help. I tear the tape off, but it only makes it worse. Tonight I couldn't resist. I looked down at the raw skin on my arm, the layers of flesh sloughing off. And that's when I saw it, tiny little eggs glowing faintly in the grooves of my flesh. The harvest has begun.